Hey everybody! This is Virtually Inspired, this show that is all about helping you up your game when it comes to virtual learning experiences. Let's change the landscape of virtual from awful to awesome. My name is Melissa Dinwiddie. I help innovative, people first organizations grow sales and retain customers and talent with creative virtual experiences because I infuse connection, joy, and delight into virtual trainings and events. That's what I do. So, welcome. I like to bring a guest in every time I have one of these LinkedIn Lives. And typically, I like to have the guests share some kind of an activity that you can, or maybe more than one activity that you can actually use with your team right away. And today's guest is going to do something a little bit different and kind of exciting and very intriguing to me. Today's guest is Lisa Yeager. And so here's something about Lisa. So Lisa believes that no one size fits all, which I totally resonate with. I think is very cool. She investigates, she listens, she draws from over 15 years of experience to select the right tools, the right processes, and the right players to address the needs of a given situation. All very cool. She's a lifelong learner, and she's currently completing a second master's degree in wildlife conservation, which augments her volunteer leadership roles for Woodland Park Zoo, which so cool. I actually had a little fantasy as a child that I wanted to be a vet, and like my dream job would have been to be a zoo vet. But anyway, in all of Lisa's roles, she seeks to establish the most effective teams and change up ineffective or inefficient processes and keep people motivated and engaged and enjoying the journey. But what I was excited to bring Lisa here to talk about and to share some activities around is climate conversations, because I've actually got to do a workshop with Lisa a while back around climate and improv. So welcome, Lisa. So happy to have you here. I'm so glad I got to finally bring you on the show. Here you are.
I'm totally psyched to be here. Awesome show, awesome concept, and I'm sure I'm probably going to learn as much from you as whatever we learn together.
So I know I did a workshop with you and a couple of other improvisers. I think it was at the Applied Improvisation Network virtual conference, maybe. I can't even remember, but it was all around improv and climate conversations. And I was super excited that that was something that you wanted to come on the show and talk about, because I mean, who else is doing that? There aren't very many people I know who are combining improv and conversations around climate. So tell me, how did you get into that?
Right. Well, almost right after my first improv experience, I took a wonderful immersive experience with Matt Smith here in Seattle, and was really into the applied improv, which is, of course, how you and I met, because he told me to immediately go to that next conference. And out of that conference even came the Kernel for Improv for Humanity, which several of us founded and did some workshops around. And around that same time, I was starting to volunteer at the zoo, and I was like, oh, wow, like improv has a lot to teach people who are thinking on their feet, interacting with the public, trying to have quick conversations, find what's sparking for them, and then layering on the fact that those are great places to be talking with the public about climate. It's really critical that we're talking about it now, and people have challenges with talking about it, which are some of our activities will get us into. And so, that was sort of my path for, bringing these things together. And since that workshop that you attended, and that was with Bobby Block and Karen Strong, we had such a great time doing that together. We joke that, all of our work is sort of the outcome of an improviser, a scientist, and a business person walk into a bar, right? Like, this is the stuff that comes out. And so we have been continuing to kind of refine that and hone it. Doing some really fascinating applied storytelling workshops this fall to help Volunteers build their own community of practice and use storytelling to help do that. And then next spring, we're going to be offering a longer series that's based on some of those same concepts to really help conservationists use some of these tools that are maybe second nature to some of us. But as you say, like nobody's quite putting those things together in this way yet.
Fabulous. I love it. I mean, here's the thing, like those of us who care about climate, who care about the environment, who care about conservation, don't always know how to talk to other people about these issues. So you've got some tools to help us, sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, probably you and others in your audience already have those tools and might not, quite be realizing it. So yeah, I want stuff. All I have is like little balls and stuff. The one toy that my dog hasn't stolen and eaten yet.
Give them time.
One
Give them time.
activity that we can play a little bit. It'll be fun, maybe just for us to play for your viewers, because this can be applied. If there's anything that's hard to talk about, or as we say, picture paints 1,000 words, or action. I mean, some of our theater tools really serve us well, right? So I could certainly start giving you a bunch of statistics about the science and the science of climate change, the social science around talking about it. Yeah, and this is what happens, right? But instead, if I invite you and whoever else is a member in our virtual space, I say, okay, we're going to create a museum, a climate museum of this moment in time. And I'm going to give you, if we were a larger group, I would split the group. I would have half the people come off camera. Those are our museum visitors. You and I will be the exhibit, and we might have more people on camera as they exhibit. And then you tell the viewers, that they're going to watch what they're going to view the exhibit when I count down from 3. And then they're going to use 5 words to describe what they're seeing. You and I will strike a pose. We'll be the exhibit. And our prompt is, what did I have here? You are going to talk to your colleague about climate change. So when I count down from 3, strike your pose. You may have just done it, right? And I'll do one too. 3, 2, 1, strike a pose. Okay, and we can release. Now, I don't know if you have viewers who can type in the chat what they might have seen. If we're a larger group, what we typically do is reverse the roles. There might be a similar or different prompt. I was busy, in my pose, but I know your immediate reaction. I'm guessing neither of us seemed too pleased or excited about that.
Yeah, I detected some anxiety, some like not thrilled feelings.
Right. Whereas it can be, if we asked the question or asked people to talk about the barriers or talk and think rationally about all these things, it's really different than when you're taking a step back. I'm just observing other people, right? Because you can imagine your Zoom screen is filled. It's a nice mosaic, right? Of people with various depictions of perhaps horror, but usually some delight and surprise. And so there's really great conversation to be had around, well, there were these outliers, and what were those about, right? And then that can lead into, it very much supports all the science that's out there that says, guess what? Nobody's talking about climate change. Guess what? It's really important that we do it, and that's what's gonna create, movement and change.
You know what I love so much about that is that it's embodied. It allows people to use their bodies to, express a feeling that they may not be able to articulate in words because they haven't even, it hasn't even gotten bubbled up to that part of their brain yet, but everybody knows how to express with their body. And once you've done that, once you've done the embodied piece, then it enables you to actually come back and start to sort of tease out and identify what that actually means in words. So it's super helpful, and it allows the people viewing the museum to see a wide range of feelings and experiences without it just being this this head,
Right.
left brain, verbal, which is so much of how we have been programmed to interact with the world. And we as humans are so much more than that. And so this climate museum approach is so brilliant because it gives people a much more a fuller way to interact and share, and it's a lot of fun.
Right. And you start to form an ensemble, right? And you're starting to perform together and play together about, ooh, this is serious stuff. You know, it's serious. We shouldn't be playing about this, right? But playing is what's going to allow us to access other ways, you know, of being, and more creativity, you know, more solutions, and more figure out the things that we can be doing, because that's part of what's so daunting about, right? It seems like such a big problem, and like I can't, you know, I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And realizing, you know, well, first of all, talking about it is a big thing that you can be doing about it. I mean, Catherine Hayhoe is the chief scientist for the Nature Conservancy, and her latest book is a big, thick book all about that, and the power and the benefit of, you know, talking about it. The other thing that, you know, I have another activity that really kind of has your name all over it. You may have invented it for all I know. But it's a similar one, and it, you know, you can use it in broader context, but I think continue to kind of play a little bit with our climate theme, and the climate museum. Do you happen to have a piece of paper nearby or a sticky note?
Oh yeah. Is it better to have a sticky note or
No, any size paper, because this, so in the broader world, for people who are like, how do I apply what you're talking about in some other context? So oftentimes, getting away from those one, you know, the verbal, you know, linear, you know, thinking. I'm sure many of us are familiar with, you know, some of the check-in, check-out activities. What's one word? What's one phrase? Answer this prompt, you know. But this is one that gets us away from the verbal stuff, which is, so, you know, we can tie it back to the climate museum and the topic at hand, but take, you know, as 10, 15 seconds and give a response to, you know, just draw a symbol or a doodle or a shape that captures what you're taking away from this.
from the climate museum exercise?
Yeah, from the activity that we just did. What's your takeaway? And I know you're a master doodler, so don't worry.
People crappy doodles.
I know, master of all doodles.
Crappy doodles. I'm all about the crappy doodles.
I know. Yes. Me too. It's amazing what comes out of the doodles.
Crappy is the operative word.
I don't know. We can ask people to judge. I'm willing to bet that mine is crappier than yours.
Well, the thing is that if you include that adjective, it liberates people.
Yes, absolutely.
And if you say it has to be fine art, then people freeze and they get paralyzed.
See, I've already learned. I actually think that little adjustment for any time I ask people to doodle anything, by just calling it crappy, will, like you said, take the heat off.
Exactly. You got to lower the bar, because otherwise it's like a pole vaulting bar that people feel like they have to. I mean, who can do pole vaulting? It's like crazy, especially if you don't have a pole and you don't have a running start. It's impossible. So people just don't even try. But if you take that bar and you lower it all the way down to the ground, then it's just like, boop, there's no starting friction. You can just hop right over it. So that's what calling it a crappy doodle does.
It's the basset hound doing agility, right?
Exactly.
The bar that basset hound could go over.
Exactly. That's why I call them crappy doodles.
Well, are you ready to share your crappy doodle?
I am.
Me
So this
too.
is my crappy doodle.
This is mine. Oh,
Oh, I
wow.
love it.
Yeah. Oh, and you have an improv science pad. That's awesome.
That's the only one I could find.
Well, she's doing some great work, so I think that's awesome. So yeah, so you could see where we could have, so if there's certainly more of us, having some conversation, and whoever feels like sharing. I find it, I don't know what your experience is about sharing out of the crappy doodles. Having somebody else interpret your crappy doodle is some fascinating shit.
I like it. So what
Yes.
I see in yours, I see like a lightning bolt, and it's hard to tell, but it looks like there's like an oval around it. And are there radiating lines
Yes, there are
coming out of the
rays
oval?
coming out.
Rays
Yeah.
coming out of it.
Yeah.
So to me, that feels like energy, and like it feels like energy, and like an aura, and yeah, like energy coming in and energy going out.
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, I didn't really have anything in mind. It's just what came, but definitely a bit of chaos too. I think is the other, that energy is sort of chaotic, and sort of figuring out how to capture and channel that.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah. And let me see.
All
Yeah,
right.
yours. Yeah. So I see an entity. It could be, like a crime scene body, but that's not what I see. I see a beautiful, luminous being that is perhaps you, with this wonderful, grounded sense of power, in their solar plexus, and brilliant ideas coming to them with that light bulb. That is what I see.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. I got like this to me is it's a moving body, and so, I don't know, something about the movement, and there's so much about crappy doodles, like it's similar to the embodied piece for me, where it's nonverbal. It's like, what is this spiral? Oh, it embodies so much. It's hard for me to articulate what the spiral means.
Right.
The light bulb definitely means idea generation for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sort of a
We're
Christ
symbolic.
thing, but
Yeah. Well, but we're symbolic creatures, right? And
yeah.
a storytelling animal, right? According to Jonathan Gotzall. So yeah, I think that's all ways that we can tap into the innate, powers and tools. And then, some of the other activities that probably your audience is familiar with, but, we just talked about, okay, so for climate change, it's really important to talk about it. To talk about it effectively, it's really important that people feel listened to. Well, gee whiz, do we know any activities that help to listen better, right? So there's lots of things in the toolkit, agreeing and building with, yes and style activities, lots of ways to help people bring those into those conversations, and to just feel a little bit more confident about being ready to have them.
Yeah. Brilliant. Do you have other activities that you do specifically for the Climate Museum? Just realized our display names are not on. I just turned them on.
Whoops. There we go. Yeah. Hey, I got it right, more or less. It's always funny, like, which way is your camera
I know. Wait.
pointing? Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, the Climate Museum is a typical kind of entry point into some of those deeper conversations and activities that we build on, in the session that you attended, and then in the series that Karen and Bobby and I have been building out, to really some of the challenges in some of those conversations is, well, knowing where to start, but also if you're in an environment where, like a zoo or an aquarium where you're maybe not going to have much time, well, then you got this whole how do I how do I have a meaningful conversation in 5 minutes, in a minute, in 30 seconds, and so there's lots that we bring in and merge, sort of from the world of interpretation, and then some of those activities of, tell the story in those shorter and shorter amounts of time. That's another game or an activity that can be illustrative there. And then there's one that I'm playing with because I don't quite know where it fits into the whole climate space. But have you and your audience played You're a Psychic or You're No Psychic?
You know what? I don't think we've ever done that. I've played it, but I don't think I've ever had anybody on the show who has done that. I had Matt Weinstein on the show, but I don't think he did that particular game.
Well, that's who I learned it from, right?
Yeah.
And he was doing a lot of great work and thinking about translating some of those in-person games to testing and seeing how they work in a virtual environment. I've used that with a lot of different teams, just because it gets different people getting to be in the sort of control seat, right? Like, so whoever is the psychic gets to play that role in whatever way they want to play it. And they also get to be, they get to make some choices about what they ask of their other players,
So can we do it just the two of us? Yeah. Is that something we can do as two people?
We can try it. And I don't know, are you able to turn your camera on and off?
Let's see what happens if I stop my camera. Yep, there we go.
There we go. Okay. So you start with your camera on, and I'll be the psychic, so I'll explain how it works, and you'll be the player, right? So in this game, the psychic, or maybe not psychic, my goal is to get the field of players. So we would, in the virtual world, we'd have a dozen or 30 or 6, however many other players, right? And so I will do my best Kreskin, for those of you who remember Kreskin from the Tonight Show or whatever. And I will be looking in my crystal ball, and I will say, I see someone who recently had lunch. And if that's true for you, you keep your camera on. If you didn't have lunch, then you're out.
Turn your camera off.
Yeah. So my goal would be to have one person left at the end. So this is a great activity if you're actually trying to narrow down to select someone to lead the next thing, or if you're just trying to get different people having experience, making those choices and, learning about one another. It's an interesting, different kind of icebreaker. And there's usually, varying amounts of giggling because being the psychic is kind of silly, right? Like, we don't normally get to play that character. We don't often get to play characters outside of the one that we, put our blazer on or go or facilitator role or whatever. So it's always great, to give people that chance.
Cool. So I did recently have lunch.
Right. Okay. So then the amazing Kreskin, but you could imagine if we had a field of other players, some of those.
Then a bunch of people turned off their cameras.
Right. Some of those cameras come off.
But I'm still here.
We're still here. So the amazing Kreskin, looking into my crystal ball, I see someone who recently, yes, it's coming to me. Someone who recently performed on stage.
I recently performed on stage. Oh my gosh. You're so psychic.
There you go. And that's the end. If I narrow it down, there's one of two outcomes. And the audience, whether your camera's on or off, you must yell loudly either, "You're a psychic," if I narrow it down, or "You're no psychic." But in this case, I was a psychic, or maybe just a particularly good consumer of social media.
I see someone who recently started playing the bass.
Well, I see that too. Oh my God, I must have the same crystal ball. It's like it's connected.
Amazing.
You're a psychic.
Oh man. Yeah, I've been at so for those of you watching, there is on every week there is a virtual, it's like an unconference, a virtual open space event for applied improvisers. And I've been to a couple of those events where Matt has done that game. And I've always ended up landing in that room kind of in the middle of the game. So I don't think I've ever landed in the room during the entire game, but it's always very entertaining.
It is, and I played it with a team one time, and I give people a lot of choice. So I played in a couple rounds, and thinking about our audiences, right? Like I adapt it because somebody like maybe you or me, like I would be excited, right, to be the one chosen to go next. But
Yeah,
maybe not everybody wants to go next, right? So usually there's some way for them to choose, who else goes next or something like that. But anyway, if you are the last one standing, but I remember being really surprised. There was a very soft-spoken, person who really didn't want to speak out much ever, and I was sure she would not want to take a chance in being in that hot seat, but she did. And it's always great when those quiet people, when we shut the hell up and give them a minute to have their voice, right? And so it was wonderful to see what kind of questions she came up with. What was she curious about? It's just a really fascinating conversations about strategy, right? Like, because were you trying to keep the game going? Because if you ask about eating food, right? Probably people ate food, right? Like, you can make the game be gone very quickly, although, somebody who was just in Iceland, like, unless you know your audience, like maybe you picked a country that not somebody's been to. So then you've lost if you don't have a single person standing. But so there's some interesting strategy that comes into play. And of course, you can't help, but when you're in a business meeting and you're playing a game that talks about strategy, like, oh, isn't that interesting? It has to do with this other kind of strategy, right? Like,
yeah.
Synergies and things come up. So it's, remarkably applicable.
And how does that relate to your climate conversations?
I don't know yet. I'm not sure how I'm going to apply it there. But like I said, we are still, we have this wonderful series coming up starting in January. It's going to be 6 weeks. And so we're weaving together all sorts of fascinating ideas, the scientist, the improviser, and the business person, locking ourselves away in a room. And so, it may fit in. But yeah, that game was coming to me when I was thinking about coming on your show. So
I love it. And I love how transparent you are about this process, and how sometimes, an activity, an idea comes up and you don't know yet how it's going to actually apply. But that's so much of what improv is about, isn't it? It's like justifying and as a performer, we have, somebody makes an offer or maybe calls you. We had this just the other night, actually twice. We had 2 performances, Saturday and Sunday, in my musical improv group. And each time somebody was endowed with, 2 people were endowed with the same name. And so this is very common because, somebody gets endowed with a name and then that name gets sort of like tattooed on your brain. And so then when somebody gets endowed again, that's the name that rolls off your tongue. And so we have 2 Beatrices. It's like, now what do you do? How do you justify that? or to, Mr. Mulroney and Elizabeth Mulroney, or, whatever it is. It's like, how do you justify that these characters have the same name? And you have to figure out a reason for why that's the case. And it's the same thing with, you have this idea for an activity, and your brain came up with that idea for a reason. So there's some way that it's going to work, or, maybe not, but there's some reason why your brain came up with it, and you will figure out the connection. And that is the beauty of improv.
Yep. Yeah, and I know people can be. I work in a science-based organization right now for my full-time gig, and some of those folks will say, "Well, I'm not an improviser." I'm like, really? Do you have a script in front of you right now? You're doing it all the time, right? It's very natural. Or the storytelling, right? Some people will say, "Oh, I couldn't do a storytelling activity in my business." It's like, really? Because that's the most normal thing. That's the most accessible activity, like sitting around talking. You really don't have to prepare. Nobody has to do anything to be ready to just sit around and talk.
It is what humans do all the time. And that's exactly what I tell people too all the time. It's like, you don't have a script as you go through your day. Your entire day is improvised. Improvisers just intentionally work on the muscles of improvising so that we get really comfortable with doing it in high stakes situations, like on the fly, it too sort of on command. But we're all doing it all the time, whether you're, an improviser with a capital I or not, whether you're doing it on stage for a paying audience or not. We're all improvising all the time.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you said about the two names, right? Because, oh my God, what a problem. And what a gift, right? Because otherwise you're all wandering around. What the hell are we doing on stage, right? What are we doing here? How do we come up with, what should we even say? Well, now you got this weird problem that you got to somehow come up with a resolution to the fact that you got two Beatrices.
Well, and the audience loves it because,
of course,
we had a guy come up to us after, I don't remember which show it was. He came up to us in the green room and he said, what he was asking us about the script or whatever, and we had to convince him that we were not using a script. He's like, what do you mean? You didn't, you're not going to do the same show? I can't come back and see the same show? Or no, we made it all. You made up the songs. He just could not wrap his head around it. And it was because for us, we were like, yeah, it's just another day at the office, Right.
Well, yeah, I had an extended, not quite argument with my husband at the AIN conference in Oxford, because as you may recall, when we get to do conferences live, we have an all-star show. And in that particular one, we had, there was an American team, there was different geographic groupings. And we walked out and my husband said, well, the Americans cheated. And I'm like, they did? How did they cheat? It's it was too perfect. The way they all just started doing that dance. And I'm like, well, see, there was an activity in the conference that was that. I know exactly how that dance emerged at that moment, quite spontaneously. But as your, audience member was saying, it just looks too good, right? It can't have just happened.
Yeah. That's improv. Take an improv class, everybody. It will change your life. Take an improv class. You get thumbs up from both of us. Take an improv class. Life-changing. Well, Lisa, I have kept you over time because this is just too much fun. I just love the Climate Museum. I love the whole thing about using improv for climate conversations. It's so inspiring, and it's so, I don't know, it just changes the whole paradigm about thinking about how to have those conversations. Oh, and here comes my cat who is deciding that he wants to interrupt my this is improv, folks. Let's see if he makes himself in front of the camera. No, he's probably going to go chew on. No, here he comes. He's probably going to try to chew on things because that's what he likes to do to bother me. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me. And how can people find you?
Well, one of the best ways is on the website climateconversations.net.
And there it is.
Yes,
Right
there it
down
is.
the way.
Right on cue with your cat's tail, I would say. Like that is a very good.
I think he is the one who tapped the
He
button.
did. He made it happen. At least you might. I don't hear about it so much anymore, but there was a moment in time when my cat somehow pulled up a picture of a former president on screen with my coworkers.
Bad
And
kitty. Bad
I
kitty.
swear, like, I really wasn't looking at that. Like I don't.
Bad kitty.
Yeah,
Bad
I know.
kitty.
No. You have a good kitty.
No, I have a very bad good kitty. Good bad kitty. I don't know. They're all bad kitties in their own way. I have to keep a spray bottle close at all times because he likes to chew things he's not supposed to chew on. But
of course he does. He's a cat.
He's a cat. He's just doing cat things.
Yep.
And he's a young cat, so he's very rambunctious. Anyway, so everyone check out climateconversations.net. And this is the part of the show where in past shows, I would normally tell you about my upcoming learning lab, but the labs aren't happening anymore on a regular monthly basis. Who knows? I might be rolling them out on a irregular basis, but I don't have a lab coming up right now. So pay attention to, follow me on LinkedIn and pay attention there because you never know what goodies I might be rolling out. And come back here in 2 weeks because in 2 weeks, my guest it's actually the second day of Rosh Hashanah, but I will be having the LinkedIn Live, my virtually inspired, will be happening in the afternoon as normal. And my guest is going to be Heather Burright. Heather is the founder and CEO of Skill Masters Market, which specializes in creating dynamic, people-centric solutions that drive business goals. Doesn't that sound cool? So she's got an eye for both the larger strategy and the creative design process. And she has created hundreds of learning experiences, both in person, self-paced, and virtual classrooms. So that's actually 3 different kinds. And she's worked with dozens of leaders to help them achieve success. So that is in 2 weeks, which is September 27th, the second day of Rosh Hashanah, for those of you who celebrate. So see you back here in 2 weeks. And thank you again, Lisa. I'm so glad I finally got to have you on the show. This has been great fun.
Yeah,
thanks, everybody.
Pleasure. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for watching. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell to get video updates. Thanks.